50% more. I blinked at my screen. No, that couldn't be right. I refreshed the page, then again, and again. But the numbers stared back at me, cold and merciless. They didn't change. It was an Excel file, mistakenly sent to the entire operations team by someone in HR. I don't even think they realized it at first. The file was titled Comp Review 2025 Final, and it was, without exaggeration, the most devastating thing I'd ever opened in my 15 years at that company. My eyes scanned down the rows, my heart pounding faster with every line. Chris Davis, 9 months. $126,500 Maya Patel. 1 year, 2 months. $129,750 Jason Lee. 7 months, $132,000 I could barely breathe. Every single one of them, new hires, most of whom I had trained myself, earned over 50% more than me. Me, Kelly Harper, 15 years, operations lead, salary, $87,300. I scrolled back to my own row 3 times. The number didn't change. I stared at it like it was some kind of cruel mistake that would vanish if I looked hard enough. But it didn't vanish. The hum of fluorescent lights, the clacking of keyboards, and the distant sound of someone laughing near the break room felt muffled, as if the world had tilted sideways. Chris, the guy I'd shown how to use our inventory management system just 2 weeks ago, was laughing at something on his screen. A meme, probably. He still didn't know the difference between gross margin and operating margin, but sure. 6 figures. My palms went clammy. The blood rushed in my ears, but my fingers moved on instinct. Download, save, backup. 3 minutes later, the recall email from HR arrived. Please disregard the previous file. Sent in error. Yeah. Sure, error. I didn't book a meeting, didn't send an email, didn't knock. I just walked straight into my boss's office. Kelly? Mark glanced up from his desk, startled. His expression shifted quickly from confusion to thinly veiled annoyance. Is something wrong? I placed my laptop on his desk. Open. The spreadsheet filled the screen. Explain this to me. His face barely flickered. Barely. Just a quick tightening around the jaw. He knew exactly what I'd found. Kelly. He sighed, leaning back in his chair like a man preparing to deliver disappointing news. We don't discuss other employees' compensation. I'm not asking about them. I'm asking about me. 15 years, 15, and yet... I tapped the screen. Jason, 9 months, makes 50% more. Mark folded his hands, gave me that corporate smile that doesn't reach the eyes. The market's changed, Kelly. New hires are brought in at market rates. It's just company policy. Then adjust mine, I said, keeping my voice even though my hands were trembling. Not from fear, from rage. It doesn't work like that, he replied, shrugging. Actually shrugging. There are structures, salary bands, internal caps. You know how it is. If you don't like it... He spread his hands. You can leave. For a second, I just stared. 15 years, I built half the processes that kept this company running. I trained people, fixed the systems when they crashed at 3 a.m., pulled all-nighters during the merger, took no sick days, skipped family holidays. For what? A shrug. I stood. My voice was calm, calculated. Thank you for clarifying. And I left. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't call my sister like I usually would. I went home, opened my laptop, sat at my kitchen table, poured a glass of $12 Cabernet, and began to write. I'm Kelly Harper, 41, the type of person who organizes her inbox into subfolders, color codes spreadsheets, and remembers everyone's birthday, including people who don't remember mine. I'm the person who's been told her entire life, you're so reliable, so dependable, so organized. Which is just corporate speak for, we will bury you in work because you're too responsible to let anything fail. I started by documenting everything. A full timeline of my 15 years. 2010, hired as an operations associate. Reduced order processing errors by 37% within the first year. 2012, promoted to operations specialist. Built the first auto reconciliation system. 2014, prevented a $1.8 million contract failure by catching a supply chain error before shipment. 2016, implemented the logistics dashboard that's still used company-wide today. 2019, trained the entire new ops team after the merger. Stayed 72 hours straight during system failures. 15 years, projects, innovations, crises averted, dollars saved, time reclaimed. I spent the entire night compiling it. By dawn, I had a 48-page report titled, The Hidden Costs of Institutional Knowledge Loss. On the final page, I ran the numbers. Value I'd generated for the company in the last fiscal year alone, $312,870. Cost to bring my salary to market rate, $45,000 adjustment. The math wasn't hard. I printed it, professionally bound it at the 24-hour print shop down the street. Then I went home, showered, pulled on the sharpest outfit I owned, a tailored navy blazer I hadn't worn since the last promotion that never came. And I slid one more thing into my bag before heading to the office. An envelope, with something inside that I knew would change everything the moment I placed it on Mark's desk. When I walked into the office that morning, something was different. I could feel it. Not from anyone else. Not yet. It was in me. For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't walking in as Kelly, the reliable one. The fixer. The one who quietly carried the weight while others collected the rewards. Numbered today, I was walking in as someone who had finally remembered her own worth. The hallway smelled like burnt coffee and cheap floor polish, same as always. But every step felt heavier, more deliberate, like I was pulling gravity behind me. I went straight to Mark's office. Tara, his assistant, glanced up from her desk, startled. "Kelly, do you have an appointment?" "No," I said, "but he's expecting me." I didn't knock, just pushed the door open. Mark looked up from his monitor, clearly caught off guard. Then his mouth pulled into that same smirk from yesterday. Smug, detached, already assuming he knew how this was going to play out. "Kelly." His tone was almost condescending. "Back so soon? What can I—" I walked straight to his desk and placed two things right in front of him. First, the 48-page professionally bound report titled, The Hidden Costs of Institutional Knowledge Loss. And second, the envelope. His eyes flicked between them. "What's this?" "Start with the envelope." He opened it. Slowly. Careful. Inside was an offer letter. From North Star Logistics, our direct competitor. Position: Senior Director of Operational Strategy Base. Salary: $142,000. Bonus structure: 15% annual plus signing bonus. Start date: 2 weeks from today. His jaw actually tensed. For the first time since I'd known him, Mark didn't have a preloaded response. "I've had this offer for 2 months," I said, folding my arms. "But I wanted to give this company, this team, a chance to do the right thing first." He scanned the page. This isn't... His fingers twitched against the paper. "This isn't necessary, Kelly. Let's not make rash decisions." I tapped the cover of my report. This document outlines 15 years of contributions. Projects delivered, crises managed, systems built. I've quantified the financial value I've generated for this company down to the last cent. He didn't open it, just stared at the cover like it might bite him. "You'll also find," I continued, "a detailed knowledge transfer plan. Every process, every contact, every workaround that lives only in my head. If I leave, this company loses that." A muscle in his jaw twitched. "You're serious?" "Very." "Kelly, look." He leaned back, trying to recover that smug composure. "I understand you're upset, but no." I cut him off. Calm, steady. You don't understand. That's the problem. You've never understood. You never saw me. You saw what I could do for you. You saw the work get done. You saw problems disappear because I made them disappear. But you never saw me. His hands clenched. There are policies, Kelly. Structures, salary bands. You know how it works. You told me that yesterday. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. And now I'm telling you, if you don't like it, you can leave. The color drained from his face. He opened the report, flipped through the pages. His eyes scanned the numbers, the timelines, the metrics. His voice cracked. This is detailed. Of course it is. Mark closed the report, sat back, and drummed his fingers on the desk, calculating. Let me talk to HR, he said finally. Let me see what I can do. You have 24 hours, I said. If there's no resolution by then, my resignation becomes effective immediately, and the knowledge transfer plan doesn't leave with me. His eyes darted. Kelly, be reasonable. I stood, gathered my bag. I was reasonable for 15 years. As I walked out, I felt dozens of eyes flick toward me. People noticed. They could sense something was happening. Whispers followed me down the hallway. Back at my desk, I opened my inbox. Half a dozen emails. Some from coworkers pretending they weren't curious. Others, not pretending at all. Is it true? Did you really get an offer? Did you really confront Mark? I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I opened a file. One I'd been quietly building for months. A file labeled Vendor Payments, Anomalies Review. Because here's the thing. Once you start looking at numbers closely, you notice things that don't add up. Small payments, odd vendors, patterns that shouldn't exist. And while I never set out to find anything, once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. The next 24 hours were quiet, too quiet. No frantic emails from Mark, no follow-ups from HR, no calendar invites, nothing. But the tension? You could cut it with a knife. People in the office were pretending not to watch me. Eyes flicking up when I stood. Conversations halting when I walked by. The rumor mill was fully operational. Everyone had heard about the spreadsheet leak. And now, everyone was guessing whether I was about to burn the whole place down. And honestly, so was I. Because as much as the salary injustice burned, the file sitting open on my second monitor burned even more. Vendor Payments, Anomalies Review. It started small. A curiosity, really. 18 months ago, I noticed a quarterly payment to a vendor I didn't recognize. $9,450. Not huge, but weird. No purchase order. No linked project. The vendor name was Jade Consulting. Consulting for what? Nobody knew. I flagged it to Mark back then. His response? A shrug. Executive approved. Don't worry about it. Except, it happened again. 3 months later. Same vendor, same amount. Then the amount ticked up. $10,200. Then $11,000. When I asked again, Mark's tone shifted. It's above your clearance. Focus on operations, Kelly. So I did, but quietly. I also started logging them. And it wasn't just Jade Consulting. There were others. Vendors with no websites. P.O. box addresses. Random consulting fees. Small enough to fly under the radar. But together? Over 18 months. More than $1.9 million. I pulled up the payment trail again. It was all there. Invoice dates, payment approvals, bank transfers. Patterns that were too perfect to be accidental. And the best part? The approval signatures. One name appeared on nearly every authorization. Mark Reynolds. I took a deep breath. This wasn't just about a raise anymore. This was about fraud. And suddenly, I realized something. Mark wasn't ignoring my raise request because he didn't think I deserved it. He was ignoring it because I had already seen too much. By 3 p.m., a calendar invite finally popped up. Subject: compensation discussion, Mark, HR, Kelly. Time: 4 p.m. Perfect. I spent the next hour finishing the second report. This one wasn't about my contributions. It was titled, Unexplained Vendor Payments, a Preliminary Audit, 22 pages, payment summaries, vendor breakdowns, bank account traces, all cross-referenced against company purchase orders. The final page? A concise statement. Preliminary analysis suggests unauthorized disbursement of approximately $1.9 million over 18 months, with a common approval pattern linked to Vice President Operations, Mark Reynolds. Was I nervous? Yeah, terrified actually. But something else had taken over. Cold clarity. At 4 o'clock sharp, I walked into the conference room. Mark was already there, tapping his pen against a notepad. Kyle from HR sat beside him, looking uncomfortable, scrolling on his phone like he didn't want to be there. Kelly, Mark nodded, fake smile back in place. Thanks for meeting with us. Of course. I sat, placed 2 folders on the table, one white, one red. Mark reached for the white one first. What's this? That's the compensation analysis I shared this morning, I said evenly. It outlines my value to the company relative to current market rates, along with my competing offer. Kyle from HR flipped it open, nodding. Very thorough, he mumbled. And the other? Mark asked, his fingers hovering over the red folder like it might bite him. That's a different conversation, I said, but one we'll need to have. Mark tensed. Let's start with the raise. By all means. I leaned back. I assume you've prepared a proposal. He cleared his throat. Look, Kelly, we value you. We recognize your contributions. After discussing with HR, we're prepared to offer a salary adjustment to... He glanced at Kyle. Kyle shifted. $98,500. I blinked. 98. Correct. Mark folded his hands. A significant increase. I stared at him. Significant. After 15 years, while Jason, 9 months on the job, made $132,000. I didn't speak. I just reached for the red folder, slid it directly in front of both of them. I suggest you read this carefully before we continue. Mark opened it, and the color drained from his face. His hands started shaking as he flipped through the first few pages. Kyle leaned in, reading over his shoulder, his face slowly draining of color too. Mark's voice was tight. What is this? An internal audit, I said calmly, of vendor payments. Specifically, consulting fees authorized without supporting documentation, without purchase orders, and without project linkage. I leaned forward, voice razor sharp. The numbers never lie, Mark. The room went dead silent. Kyle was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. I need to notify legal. Mark stood suddenly. This meeting is over. No, Mark, I said, standing too. This meeting is just getting started. Mark stormed out of the conference room so fast that Kyle from HR had to scramble to pick up his laptop and follow. The red folder sat there on the table, wide open. Pages fluttered slightly under the weak breath of the air conditioner. I didn't move. Not yet. Through the glass walls, I watched Mark head straight down the hallway, toward the executive suite. His shoulders hunched, steps stiff. People glanced up from their desks, heads swiveling like spectators at a tennis match. No one said a word, but everyone was watching. Something was happening, and everyone knew it. I stood, gathered both folders, and walked, slow, deliberate, back to my desk. My heart was hammering, but my hands were steady. Not 5 minutes later, an email hit my inbox. Subject: Meeting request, urgent, from Vanessa Hall, Chief Operating Officer. Time, 5 p.m., Executive Conference Room. No subject line fluff. No polite greetings, just urgent. Yeah, no kidding. At 4:58, I made my way toward the executive wing. I'd only been in that conference room twice in 15 years, once for a Christmas party planning meeting, the other when they briefed the team during the merger, never as someone sitting at the table. Tara, the executive assistant, barely glanced at me as she opened the door, but her expression was pale, like someone who knew she was watching a storm roll in and couldn't do anything to stop it. Inside were 4 people: Vanessa Hall, COO, calm, controlled, but her eyes were sharp, calculating; Garrett Monroe, CFO. Leaned forward, brows furrowed, hands steepled like a man preparing to negotiate a hostage release. Kyle from HR, looking like he desperately wished the floor would open and swallow him. And Mark. Mark sat stiffly at the far end of the table, face pale, jaw clenched. Kelly. Vanessa nodded to the chair across from her. Please, sit. I placed both folders on the table again, white and red. No one asked what they were this time. They already knew. Garrett tapped the red folder with one finger. We've reviewed this, thoroughly. I stayed quiet, just folded my hands and waited. Vanessa spoke next. First, we want to be clear that the company takes allegations of financial misconduct very seriously. The corporate damage control script. Here we go. That said, Garrett continued, we also recognize your concerns regarding your compensation, and we're prepared to address that immediately. He slid a printed offer letter across the table. $152,000 salary, $30,000 retention bonus, promotion to Senior Director of Operations, immediate seat at the leadership table. I glanced at it, slowly, lifted one eyebrow. That's quite a jump from yesterday's offer of 98. Kyle flinched like I'd slapped him. Garrett coughed. Circumstances have evolved. Vanessa folded her hands. In exchange, the company requests that you sign the enclosed confidentiality agreement regarding both compensation structures and any operational irregularities you may have come across. There it was, the real purpose of this meeting. Not rewarding me, not valuing me, silencing me. I let the silence stretch, counted to 5. Let them stew in it. Then leaned forward, voice low but steady. You do realize that a confidentiality agreement doesn't cover criminal activity, right? Mark stiffened. His face went completely rigid. Garrett's fingers twitched. Vanessa's expression didn't change, but her eyes narrowed ever so slightly. I'm not making accusations, I continued, merely observations, documented ones. I tapped the red folder. But if you'd like, I can forward this to the board. Or, I shrugged. The authorities. Kyle actually made a small choking sound. Garrett shot him a warning look. Vanessa stayed composed. Kelly, let's not escalate unnecessarily. We believe this can be handled internally. Oh, I believe that too. I smiled. In fact, that's why I haven't made any phone calls yet. Consider this a professional courtesy. Garrett cleared his throat. What would it take to resolve this? Fully. There it was, the ask. The moment the power fully flipped. I opened my notebook. Calm, steady, like I'd rehearsed this. Because I had. My terms are simple. I ticked them off with my fingers. 1. My compensation adjusted to the level outlined. 2. A formal audit of all vendor payments over the past 3 years. 3. A formal commitment from the executive team to review and correct compensation disparities across the company. 4. A public acknowledgement of my promotion and role. 5. I paused. Let it hang. Full indemnity. No retaliation clauses. In writing, Mark's face went beet red. This is blackmail, he hissed. I tilted my head. No, Mark, this is negotiation. Or did you forget how that works? Vanessa exchanged a long glance with Garrett, calculating, measuring, trying to figure out how much damage I could do if I walked. Garrett sighed. We need time to review this. Not too much time, I said, standing. My offer expires in 48 hours. After that, I closed the red folder with a snap. I'm done being polite. As I walked out, Mark's voice followed me, low, bitter, furious. You're making a mistake, Kelly. I didn't look back. No, Mark, you did. 15 years ago. The next morning felt different. I expected anxiety, nerves, maybe even regret. Instead, clarity. For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't wondering how to be useful, how to be indispensable, how to keep everyone else afloat. I wasn't the invisible backbone of someone else's success. I was the storm. At 10:32 a.m., my phone buzzed. Caller ID, Garrett Monroe, CFO. I let it ring twice, then answered, cool as ice. Kelly speaking. Kelly? Garrett's voice was tight but composed. We've reviewed your terms. I waited. Silence is a powerful thing. People rush to fill it. Garrett did exactly that. We're prepared to agree, in principle, to most of your conditions. Most, I echoed. Define most. Your salary adjustment, the promotion, public acknowledgement, and the non-retaliation clause? All fine. I said nothing. But, he continued, the company cannot commit to a full audit of vendor payments. It's disruptive, potentially damaging, and frankly, not necessary. I almost laughed. Not necessary. Garrett, I said, voice low, do you understand why I made that part of the deal? A pause. I do, but the executive team believes that's a separate matter, one that doesn't need to involve you. There it was, the line in the sand. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. Thank you for clarifying. Kelly, be reasonable. I am, I replied. I'm being more reasonable than anyone else in your position would be. Click. I hung up. At 11:17 a.m., I sent 2 emails, one to Amara Jenkins, chair of the board of directors, the other to Diane Lutz, senior partner at an external audit and forensic accounting firm that, conveniently, had been my sister's client 2 years ago. Both emails contained the same thing: a zip file of my red folder, the vendor payment anomalies, a summary of my internal communications attempting to address it, a polite professional request for formal review. No threats, no accusations, just facts. Cold, documented facts. By 2 p.m., the entire office felt like it was vibrating. Emails flying, closed-door meetings, executives walking briskly, heads down, whispers spreading like wildfire. I didn't have to say a word. At 3:46 p.m., a calendar invite popped up. Subject: Board of Directors Emergency Meeting. Attendance required. Time 4 p.m. Executive conference room, 15 minutes. That was fast. When I walked into the room, it was completely different from yesterday. Amara Jenkins, board chair, was at the head of the table, her expression carved from granite. 3 other board members were dialed in via video, stone-faced on the big monitor. Garrett sat stiffly, pale. Vanessa avoided my eyes entirely. Kyle from HR wasn't even in the room this time. Interesting. And Mark? Mark sat in the far corner, shoulders hunched, sweat beading at his temple. His leg bounced nonstop under the table. The fall had already begun. Kelly. Amara nodded, her voice formal but sharp. Please sit. I took the seat they offered, unfolded my notebook. Calm, professional. We've reviewed the documentation you submitted, Amara began, including the irregular vendor payments and the correspondence indicating you raised concerns previously. A beat of silence. She let it sit there, heavy. The evidence is substantial, she continued. Our preliminary review indicates deliberate misappropriation of company funds. My eyes flicked to Mark. His hands clenched into fists on his knees. Amara's gaze didn't waver. Effective immediately. Mark Reynolds is suspended pending a full external investigation. Mark jolted upright. You can't. Sit down, Amara said, voice like steel. Security is already waiting outside this door. You'll be escorted off the premises. Mark's face went gray. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Garrett cleared his throat, trying to salvage control. Amara, perhaps we should— Quiet, Garrett. One of the board members cut in from the video feed. You are not in a position to negotiate right now. Amara turned back to me. Kelly, first, let me say, what you've done here took extraordinary courage. I nodded. Thank you. The board is fully committed to addressing not only the fraud, but also the broader cultural issues that allowed this to go unnoticed for so long. Vanessa finally spoke, her voice thin. We had no idea. Did you? Amara's eyes pinned her down like a butterfly in a glass case. Because Kelly reported this, and you did nothing. Vanessa went quiet. Amara continued, We would like to formally offer you the role of Vice President of Operational Integrity. Your compensation will be commensurate with executive leadership. Your first task will be assisting the forensic audit, and after that, rebuilding the operational systems to prevent this from ever happening again. I sat for a long moment, processing, measuring. Then I smiled, slowly. I accept. As Mark was escorted past the glass walls, his face a mask of disbelief, I caught his eye. And for the first time, he looked away. He couldn't even look me in the face. Because he knew. The person he'd underestimated for 15 years had just brought the house down. When I stepped into my new office, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, it didn't feel like victory. Not at first. It felt strange. 15 years of walking these same halls, head down, unseen. 15 years of solving problems that other people took credit for. Of watching promotions pass me by. Of hearing, you're so reliable. Code for we'll overload you because you won't complain. And now? I was sitting on the other side of the table. Not because someone finally gave me a seat. Because I took it. The fallout came faster than anyone expected. Within 48 hours of the board meeting, the forensic audit team uncovered even more than I had. The fraudulent vendor accounts Mark had used weren't his only scheme. There were kickbacks, falsified consulting fees, and hush payments buried under miscellaneous expense codes. The total? Over $3.4 million siphoned over 5 years. Garrett, the CFO, was removed within a week. Not for participating in the fraud, but for gross negligence. His signature was on too many approvals he never bothered to read. He quietly resigned with a generic press release citing personal reasons. Vanessa, the COO, lasted a little longer, but when it became clear the board was cleaning house, she jumped ship to a startup. And 2 months later, that company quietly terminated her after leadership concerns. As for Mark, criminal charges, wire fraud, embezzlement, corporate theft. Last I heard, his trial was scheduled for next spring. The company survived, barely. The scandal made headlines, stock prices tanked, clients threatened to walk. But it didn't collapse, thanks in part to the fact that I, the person who designed half the operational systems, was still here. In my first 3 months as Vice President of Operational Integrity, I implemented sweeping changes, transparent vendor processes, a new whistleblower policy, mandatory quarterly audits, and, my personal favorite, a complete overhaul of the compensation structure. No more secrets, no more market conditions excuses. If you did the work, you got paid what you were worth. Period. I remember one afternoon walking past the break room, overhearing someone whisper to a coworker, "Man, you don't mess with Kelly." I smiled, because they were right. Not anymore. A few weeks after the dust settled, I had dinner with my sister. Meredith looked at me across the table, grinning. "I still can't believe you did it." I swirled my wine. "Believe it. The old you would have just taken it. Just kept your head down." I nodded. She's gone. Meredith laughed. Good, because the new Kelly, the one who knows exactly what she's worth, she's terrifying, and I love her. A few months later, an email landed in my inbox. Subject: Opportunity. Would love to discuss. From Catherine Wu, CEO of Apex Global Logistics. I opened it, read the first line. We were impressed by how you handled the operational crisis at your current company. We'd like to offer you the role of Chief Operating Officer. Let's talk. I smiled, because now they saw me. Did I take it? Maybe. Maybe not. That's not the point. The point is, I don't stay where I'm not valued anymore. Not in jobs, not in friendships, not in relationships. I don't beg to be seen. I don't accept that's just company policy as an excuse for being treated like I'm disposable. And neither should you.